Hi everyone. Today with us we have Lars Olsen, who is the partner and chairman of the board of Better World Fashion. And thank you, Lars, for being here today with us. I would like to ask you something more about your company, what you're doing, and what is the purpose of Better World Fashion?
So just a little bit of a background. Better World Fashion is a fashion company, of course, but it's a special company in the sense that none of us that actually are part of the company we don't have backgrounds within the fashion industry. So for my own situation is that I'm a physicist and I have worked within renewable energy for many years. But a year ago, I joined Better World Fashion, and Better World Fashion was established in 2015. And it was established as a kind of way to prove that you can actually do business in the fashion industry without being bad and destroying the environment and so on. So it was a test essentially to see whether you could actually take the second worst polluting industry in the world and do a circular business that didn't harm the environment or people. So that was the idea. And the way it was started out was, from the very beginning to look into how could you set up a business model that was actually circular and that fulfilled these criteria. So the entire idea behind Better World Fashion is that we essentially produce new products from waste. So the main material that we are using is leather, but it is post-consumer leather. So the leather has been collected by NGOs here in Denmark, but also in Germany. They of course collect it to sell it in the second-hand shops. But sometimes they can't sell it because it's out of fashion or it's the wrong color, or it's maybe damaged somehow. So we actually buy that surplus leather in bulk, and then we take it apart and we wash it in a special process that only involves sawdust and hot air, so no water, no chemicals. And then those pieces of leather are, you can say, our raw material for new products like leather jackets and computer bags and aprons and other, you can say, lifestyle and fashion products. So nice thing about these products is that it's 98% reuse, and a side effect is actually that they're all unique. Even though we have, you can say, specific models we have 3 female leather jackets, for instance, and 3 male leather jackets. They are all individual because our raw material is not homogeneous. So it depends on the leather that we have, and that of course we can't really control, but that's also, you can say, fascinating thing about the business.
I think that's the best part, that you have unique products that really can speak to each one of us. And I'd like to ask you, because you said you're taking these post-consumer products, leather jackets, and you're using them. Is it an upcycling project? So you're not downcycling the material? How is that energy efficient, and what's the impact of reusing these materials?
Well, it's certainly upcycling. So not only the leather, but also the lining that we have inside the jackets and inside other products, that is made from recycled PET bottles, so plastic bottles. You can say what we are doing is essentially to take some leather that would otherwise be either put on landfill, but here in Denmark we don't really put things on landfill, so we incinerate it instead. So that would be burned if we didn't buy it. So we essentially take something that would otherwise be wasted and then we turn it into new product. So that's one part of what we are doing. But of course we also want to be circular in other ways than just taking a waste stream and turning it into new products. So our business model is essentially built out as a circular model from the beginning. So we can, if you want to change often, for instance, we have a leasing model. So you can lease a leather jacket for a minimum period of 4 months, and then you can ship it back to us and you can get a new one. Or if you buy it, we have an unlimited buyback guarantee, which means that whatever happens to that jacket, it doesn't depend on how old it is, you can actually return it to us and then you get a 50% discount on a new product in the same price category. And the nice thing is that then we are sure that we get the materials back. And even if you have had a leather jacket that somebody they're crashing on the bike and they damaged the sleeve on the leather jacket, there might still be very good parts of or patches of leather in that jacket. And when we take it apart, we can use that again, for instance, for a computer bag or something.
What I find is extremely interesting about leather is that it's a material that can be easily upcycled. So while mainly when you speak about different fabrics, you really need to recycle these materials, and that has an environmental impact that it's no way more impactful compared to leather. And so the question is, where the idea came from, which was the vision and mission that made Better World Fashion start its business?
Well, yeah, you can say the mission is, of course, to change the fashion industry. We want to demonstrate that it can be done, and you can actually produce fashion, and you can even though we don't like the idea of fast fashion, we can still support people that want to change, often via our leasing model. So we don't really expect people to change the way they behave very much. So that's one thing. So we want to change this idea about how the fashion industry is working, but we also want to change the mindset of people, because and that's essentially a very fundamental thing, that we all been growing up in a culture where new is good, right? So you always strive for the new stuff. But what we want to demonstrate is that sometimes, or very often actually, the idea about having a story is actually part of the value proposition. So our leather, for instance, that we use for new products has a story. Of course, we don't exactly know that story, but you can often see, you can say signs of that story in the leather. It might have patina, it might have some marks or imprints or scars, or it might even have a special pocket that is carried on to the new product. So for instance, for our aprons, you will often find that they have additional pockets and actually are from the original leather jacket. So they're all individual. And this idea about having a story, and it's not just an anonymous product, is also a way to change the mindset of people, to think about that the story itself is actually kind of the value proposition. Just think about it. If you had an old car going on an auction, it would probably not be much worth unless Elvis has been driving in it, or somebody some other celebrity, right? So that's again a sign that if you have the story about the product and what has been going through throughout the life cycle, then suddenly you have a lot more value, actually. And that's also our idea, that is to change the thing, or the way people think about value. And especially that it's not only, you can say, the material value, but also the value of the story behind it. It's right. It's actually very strange. If you look into who are the biggest experts within storytelling, and storytelling is promoted everywhere, right? If you want to change how people they behave and how their feelings and so on, you have to use storytelling. And the biggest experts in storytelling, that's within the marketing industry, right? But the funny thing is that all the products they sell in that way, they are completely anonymous. They don't have any story at all. They are all identical. You have 1,000 pieces of the same T-shirt, for instance, right? And I mean, if you buy this one or the next one, I mean, it doesn't matter. They're all equal.
They're the same of the others. Yeah, it's also
they don't have any story at all, but all our products, they have a story. And we actually, at some point, had an app in a beta version. It was a test, essentially, to see whether we could get people to build up the value by you can say, telling some of the story. So if they took their leather jackets to a festival or a concert or something, they could take a picture and upload it to the app. And it was a little bit like a social media thing, right? But I mean, you couldn't like other people's, you essentially just build the story of the product. And the idea was that when the product got back to us, either because people that used the unlimited buyback guarantee, because they had leased the product, ultimately it would go back to us and we would get the story. And when we then took the product apart and the leather pieces, they went into a new product. The story was supposed to follow those leather pieces. So just imagine that if you bought a computer bag and you not only got the bag, but you also got access to the story, telling that there were pieces of that bag that had actually been a leather jacket before, that had went to this concert, and then you would also see that story as part of the value proposition. So that's another thing. And you can say Our vision is, of course, that the fashion industry dramatically changes into an industry that is not making harm. That's essentially, you can say, the ultimate vision.
And the idea of storytelling is really linked, I think, to the concept of transparency and traceability, because how can you tell the story of the product if you do not share transparently the story behind the product? And I think that has even a lot in common with the concept of being a big corporation company, which tries to measure what they are doing and trying to communicate that transparently. So the question is, when have you decided to become a B Corp, and why you are a B Corp company?
Well, we became a B Corp company in 2017. That was actually, you can say, the company was started in 2015, and the launch of the first portfolio of products came in a Kickstarter campaign in 2016. So becoming a B Corp in 2017 was actually pretty early in the history of the company. And it was not really a big decision, because it was, I mean, the company was born as a circular company, and becoming a B Corp was more like, we want to document that we are actually doing good for the world. So it was quite natural, I would say, to join the B Corp. And in 2017 and 2018, we were appointed as Best for the Environment by the B Corp Lab.
Congratulations. I think that's a really great achievement. Also because you are not a small company, you're a medium big company. And that's something new among the B Corps. There are a lot of small companies there. And I think that you can share something with the big companies that want to become B Corps and find that difficult, because maybe there are more complexity to manage and to measure.
Well, we're not that big, actually. We are a pretty small company still, even though we have existed for some years. It depends on how you count, of course, because our production facility is a partner that we have cooperated with since we started. So that's a family-owned business. But you can say we have had that the idea that we should be transparent and be aware of all the effects of what we are doing. That was built into the business model from the very beginning. So that has not been, you can say, a new thing as such for us. It has always been part of the mindset of the company. But you're right. I mean, telling the story, actually a way to promote these products, of course, but it's also a challenge sometimes, because people are so, you can say, used to fast fashion that just being able to tell the story is sometimes difficult. We figured out that we couldn't sell our products in ordinary fashion retailers because they didn't know how to tell stories. I mean, they were used to sell, you can say, a big number of identical things, right? And if people had a problem with the sizing, I mean, they could help, right? But they were not, you can say, used to tell stories about the products themselves. So it has turned out that our best retailers are not really in the fashion niche. I mean, they are in other kind of niches where they tell stories. It has turned out actually that wine retailers are pretty good at selling our aprons, for instance. They often use them themselves, right? But I mean, just think about it. When they go into a wine shop, they have time, right? And they probably need to hear a lot of stories about grapes and whatnot, and see a lot of things on the shelves, and maybe also taste a little bit and so on. So it's kind of an experience to go into a wine shop and you can say, buy a good bottle of wine. And the same thing with our products. I mean, if they are in that mode, they have time to actually listen to the story and try to understand
Enjoy the story behind the product while drinking wine. And so you are telling me that you can buy a leather jacket in a wine shop in Denmark there?
Well, our jackets, I can't remember. I don't think there are any wine shops that actually sells our jackets, but our lifestyle products like our aprons and oven mitts and pot holders, for instance, they are often sold in wine shops. Another example is Bilder merchant markets. During the Corona pandemic last summer, there was a chain of building merchant markets that tried to, in Copenhagen, tried to make smaller shops so they were closer to people and they could still do some business, right? And they actually started out using our aprons when they sold wood products and painting and whatnot. And people, they start to ask them, okay, where did you get those? I mean, can we buy them? And they actually sell them now, and which is also kind of a little bit of a strange thing. It's not something you would expect from the beginning. So, but that's also, you can say, an untraditional way to sell stuff that where you meet people when they're in another mode than they usually are when they buy fast fashion, for instance.
Absolutely, that's extremely an important point. And I want to ask you how being a purpose-driven company really affects the way you take decisions in the company, and how this entire project about your circular business model, being a regenerative business, really is difficult sometimes to tackle and also to communicate to the customer.
Right. Yes. So essentially, since it is built into, you can say, our culture and our mindset from the very beginning that this was a company that should do things in a different way, it is essentially a natural part of all kinds of decisions when you make, right? So it's hard to improve very much on the way we produce products, since we are actually, you can say, if you look into everything in that process of how we produce products, then since we take something out of waste stream that would otherwise have been just wasted in an incineration plant, then you can say our footprint is extremely low, if not negative, in some aspects. But of course, there are other issues like the logistics, right? We have our online shop where we sell to the entire world, and we have sold to more than 60 countries. And if we sell a jacket, for instance, to New Zealand from Denmark, and it goes over there and turns out that it's not the right size, then it has to go back again, and we have to send another one over there. And of course, that's not very smart. So that is something we're looking into. How can we actually make sure that people get the right size from the very beginning? And also, how can we minimize, you can say, the footprint of the logistics, and especially also how we package things and so on. So there are other issues that we are still looking into how we can improve on, and how we can do it in a better way, you can say.
I absolutely agree. I can somehow understand what you're saying, because I used to work within the sustainability team of Yoox Net-a-Porter, and big e-commerce have this huge problem about the free shipment, because you try the jacket, you see if it's the right size, or you send it back without caring about the environmental impact. People used to and are using to buy the same product of different sizes just to try them and then say, okay, I can ship them back for free. There's also another concept you were saying about how do you communicate this story? Can you really provide this product a unique digital identity? And we were trying to empower that using technology and the QR code or a unique digital ID. And I think that about that, really, technology and innovation really can play a big role in supporting sustainable transition. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we have already from the very beginning, we realized that since our products are unique, why don't we just simply label them? So you can say all our larger products, they have a unique identity. So all our jackets, they have the model name and a number that is forth-running, right? People that just tell the name of the jacket and the number, we know exactly which one it is. And just to touch upon what you said about this, people buying several sizes of the same jacket, right? There's a funny thing about our products here, because since they're all unique, if people, they actually fall in love with a specific jacket, and then, I mean, often leather jackets are just black or brown, right? But we have some that are in different colors and so on. And if people, they fall in love with that jacket and turns out it's not the right size, then it's a surprise for them that they can't just get it one size bigger, right? Because the same jacket doesn't exist.
Exactly.
I mean, of course, we actually allow them to sort of make a specific order. If people have specific wishes, we're so flexible, we can try to make some that looks like another jacket, right? So if people, they often order also you can say, a specific nuance of brown, whether it's dark brown or light brown or something. And we can do that. It takes a little bit of time because we have to make sure that we have the leather in the right color, and of course we need to produce it on order, right? But we can do that. But the idea that you can't just get another jacket one size larger that looks exactly the same. I mean, that's a new thing for people, and they have to sort of think about that for a little while, because that's really strange.
On the other hand, it's a way to make people think before buying something. I should suggest to YNAB to also sell unique products, so people would avoid to buy three different sizes of the same product.
Well, that's actually the case. I mean, we don't have. I don't think I can remember one single example where people in the US or New Zealand or Australia or somewhere far away, they have ordered more than one jacket. I mean, we see it every once in a while here in Denmark, but not if it's going around the world. Because, so I mean, the uniqueness actually is a good way to make sure that doesn't happen.
Great. And I want to ask you, because as you said, that of course, customers also, we don't want to call them customers, we can call them users, people. How can you make them understand the real value behind this product, but how also do you communicate that you're a B Corp? Do you think they understand the value of being a B Corp company, or is it still difficult to communicate that to the final user?
That depends. You can say the entire idea behind our products is best communicated if you actually talk to people directly, because it takes some time to sort of make them realize that this is different. And that has, you can say, made it a little bit difficult to also sell it online unless people were actually specifically searching for things like that. I mean, we sometimes sell to people different places in the world that are looking for a sustainable leather jacket, for instance, right? And that is very hard to find, actually. So we have had people that said we couldn't find any place we could buy a thing like that, and you seem to be the only one in the world that actually provides, you can say, leather jackets with essentially zero imprint or zero footprint. So, and that, I mean, you can say, in the end, I mean, our leather is coming from animals, right? But in our production process, we didn't harm any animals at all. So, I mean, I guess that even some weekend people, they would maybe be allowed to wear one of our jackets, while if it was you can say a jacket from virgin materials, it would be different, right? So, but the B Corp thing, that depends very much on where people are coming from. In the US, it's opening a lot of doors. I mean, if you're a B Corp, then you don't have to say much more. If it's in Europe, it's not as well known, I would say. But of course, I mean, the number of B Corps is growing pretty quickly, and that helps a lot. And also within the B Corp community, for instance, here in Denmark, I mean, we are trying to spread you can say, the message about what B Corp is all about. So it adds to, you can say, the credibility of what we sell and the company and so on. But I think there's still a way to go before you can say everybody knows what B Corp is.
There's definitely a long way to go, because B Corp, I think, is really strong within the B2B business. And that's what the other companies, the other B Corp, fashion B Corp's company are telling us today. But they are all agreeing on the fact that this is helping them define their roadmap towards sustainability. So if you are loose and you don't know what to do, you still have a community supporting you to find the right way. And so I want to ask you, first of all, why do you think other fashion companies should be certified B Corp? And if you agree or not? And how do you think the fashion industry should and you would like to change in the future?
Well, I mean, those questions are very closely connected, I would say, because you can say if the fashion industry and companies within the fashion industry, they join the B Corp movement, they are, first of all, they're obliged, of course, to qualify. And just to qualify would mean a lot, right? I mean, they have to change their ways. In many different ways. I mean, all the way from where stuff is produced and how they treat the people where it's produced, to how they ship things around the world, to how they treat their own employees locally, and so on. So, I mean, just to take that step is a hugely important step. But when companies have been certified as B Corp, then they also have to improve from year to year, right? So that would be a movement towards, you can say, a better industry overall. That would, I mean, continue to not just make one step right, but continue to take steps all the time. So that's hugely important. But that connects, of course, to what I would like to see the fashion industry do overall, and that is, of course, to, you can say, stop their bad practice today. First of all, stop exploiting people, stop exploiting the resources. Not the least, stop, you can say, making artificial needs, resulting in people only using new clothes for less than a handful of times, right, before it's discarded. That is a waste of resources that we should not allow. And of course, that is a tremendous change of the industry as it is today, because they need to essentially rewrite the entire code for what the industry is. And
rewrite it from the scratch, absolutely.
Exactly. And the question is whether they are, you can say, whether they're able to do that, or whether it actually takes some disruptors that comes in and take over the business, and by doing things in a different way, and then the old dinosaurs, they will die out. I don't know, but I mean, there are, for sure, I mean, there are good signs within the fashion industry. At least there are some initiatives here and there, also among the big corporations. But the difficult part is that it's so ingrained into their business model and how they do stuff and how they do their daily operations, that it's very hard to see they can reinvent themselves by just changing things along the way, instead of, I mean, scrapping the entire thing and start all over.
Yeah, I think that on one side, there are new signs that are making transition in the industry, as the due diligence law that is upcoming now in Europe and obliging these companies to really monitor their social environmental risks throughout their supply chain. That's something new. And on the other side, I hope that this commitment to get to net zero by 2050 would really try to make them think about how and what to do. So last questions, it's really about that. It's asking you a good practice you want to share and a bad practice you have learned to avoid.
Right. The good practice is always start with the systemic perspective. If you are starting to make new initiatives or changing things, then go into the helicopter and see how does that affect everything. How does that affect all the way from the very start in the value chain to not only when you have sold the product, but also when it reaches the end of the lifetime. What will happen? Do you have a plan? I mean, what are you thinking about? What will be the next life of this product? And so that's essentially what you should do. Take the systemic perspective and take responsibility. I mean, that's really, it's not, I mean, you should, this idea that you have responsibility until you hand it over at the point of sale. Stop that. I mean, you have responsibility for the entire thing that you are creating and the entire life of it. So that's very important. What you have to avoid is business as usual. I mean, you have to essentially scrap everything you know, and that's, you can say, that has been our advantage since we don't have any background in fashion. We didn't have to scrap anything because we didn't know anything. So we just start with a blank piece of paper essentially and said, okay, ideally, how would you think this could work, and what do we need to do to make it work like that? So business as usual, that's a thing of the past.
I really liked all these insights, and I think that can be really useful because that makes really understand how that can be a viable way of doing business and being that profitable, not just being that environmentally and socially sustainable.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.